Hello everyone, hope all of you are safe and healthy. Welcome to IAS Baba's Rapid Revision Series for Prelims 2021. This is session 61 and day 85. And the topics we have is the constitutional bodies, the Indian polity. So these are the hot topics we are going to discuss. Friends, as we have discussed in the first two topics, we are going to take the guessworks of the 2020 UPSC prelims paper, and then in the next we are going to take up the Central Information Commission, and then the Election Commission, and then the Niti Aayog, and then Public Service Commission of both union and state, that is the UPSC and the SPSC, then FSSAI, that is the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, then National Consumer Disputes Redressal Commission, that is the NCDRC, then the Bharatiya Shiksha Board, and then the comparison of selection committees of various bodies. So coming to the first one, the guesswork. Friends, this is the question asked in 2020 UPSC prelims. With reference to carbon nanotubes, consider the following statements. It can be used as a carriers of drugs and antigens in human body. Then they can be made into artificial blood capillaries for an injured part of human body. Then it can be used in biochemical sensors, and then the carbon nanotubes are biodegradable. Friends, in the technology and science questions, the can word is basically prominent in the UPSC questions. Friends, as far as technology is concerned, can is always a can. Yes, human beings can give birth to dogs. Yes, it can be possible in future. Or human beings can live in Mars. Yes, it can be possible in future. So can is a can. So search for any other extreme words here. If there are no extreme words, then the sentence bearing the can word will always be correct. So here there are no extreme words here. So 1, 2 and 3 should be correct. So I am searching for 1, 2 and 3. So only this option has all the 1, 2 and 3. So 1, 2 and 3 for D should be the answer. Then come to next one. Consider the following activities. Spraying pesticides on a crop field, then inspecting the craters of active volcanoes, and then collecting breath samples of spouting whales for DNA analysis. So at the present level of technology, so here is a trap, so you cannot add can here. So at present level of technology, whatever is possible, that you have to mark the right answer. So as per the present level of technology, which of the above activities can be successfully carried out by using drones? Yes friends, here we use the technological common sense, that is spraying pesticide on a crop field. Yes friends, drones are those objects which fly over, and when they are flying, they can spray the pesticides if they are connected with a pipe and the pesticides is supplied to that. Then inspecting the craters of active volcano. Yes, as they move over the active volcanoes, they can capture the pictures and they can be analyzed. Then collecting the breath samples. If some air sensors are attached to the drones and if they fly over the sea surfaces, they can also capture the breath analysis of the whales. So these whales, they puff up the air into the atmosphere from the sea surface itself. So all these are possible, there are no extremities, and hence D can be the correct answer. So here we are using technological common sense. The experiment will employ a trio of spacecraft flying in formation in the shape of an equilateral triangle that has sides 1 million kilometers long, with lasers shining between the craft. So friends, I don't know what is this, I haven't read it, but still I know something like laser has to be attached. So I search for laser here. Friends, we know that almost all the space missions will be abbreviated. So I search for L. I have got two options which contain L. That is the LISA, Pathfinder and the Evolved LISA. So either C or D should be the answer. Now coming to the statement once again. The experiment will employ a trio spacecraft. So this will shows that this is a futuristic plan. So this plan hasn't been executed right now. It is a futuristic plan. So here we have two options, that is the LISA Pathfinder and the Evolved LISA. So this evolved word, it shows that this D is the later one and C1 is the earlier one. So future means something which comes later. So I take a crude guess saying that evolved LISA should be the correct answer because of this word will. So I straight away go on to hit D. Friends, here there are risks as well, but you don't have any option if you don't know. At least this much you have done it. So go ahead and mark as D. Even if it is wrong, don't get remorse. As you are attending 90 plus questions, you will be able to clear the prelims, no issues. Then come to next one. Consider the following statements. Genetic changes can be introduced in the cells that produce eggs or sperms of a prospective parent. So once again can is present and there are no extremities or there is no extreme word here. So we can consider it as a correct statement. Then a person's genome can be edited before birth at the early embryonic stage. Yes friends, even technologically it is correct, but we are not using the knowledge here. The can word shows that this can be correct as well. Then human induced pluripotent stem cells can be injected into the embryo of a pig. Friends, here can is there once again. So if our guessing strategy goes correct, so all these should be correct. So we will mark D as the answer. Even technologically speaking, friends, all these are possible. Friends, we know that from the concept of pig hearts, the hearts of the pigs can be installed into human beings. So then what is the problem in inducing pluripotency in pig cells? Then a person's genome can be edited at any stage, not only at the early embryonic stages. Then genetic changes can be introduced in the cells that produce eggs. Any genetic changes at any cells can be introduced. So we are safe in hitting the D as an option. Then come to next one. What is the importance of using pneumococcal conjugate vaccines in India? These vaccines are effective against pneumonia as well as meningitis and sepsis. So friends, this is a moderate statement. There are no extremities. We will consider this. We will neither put right nor wrong. Then dependence on antibiotics that are not effective against drug resistant bacteria can be reduced. So this is also a moderate statement. We will consider it later. Then these vaccines have no side effects and cause no allergic reactions. So this no side effects and no allergic reactions, this is an extreme statement. So these three we will cut out. So when we cut out these three, both C and D will be out of the race. Now 1 and 1 and 2 only. So here we need not check 1, we have to check only 2. That is, dependence on antibiotics that are not effective against drug resistant bacteria can be reduced. Yes friends, by vaccination, the medication, that is antibiotics, will be reduced. Because if we are vaccinated, we need not take the antibiotics. Yes, surely it will reduce the antibiotic resistance. So B can be the correct answer. We straight away hit B. So these are some of the guessing strategies. If you have, share it with your friends. Then come to next one, Central Information Commission. Friends, why was it in news? Because recently the Supreme Court asked the central government to give details about the pendency of cases in the Central Information Commission. So in this context, CIC will be in news. Now coming to the CIC. Friends, CIC was constituted in 2005 under the Right to Information Act 2005. We all know that, friends. There is no prize for guessing this. Then the jurisdiction of commission extends over all the central public authorities. So almost all the central government authorities, they come under the jurisdiction of Central Information Commission. Then it consists of Chief Information Commissioner and such number of Central Information Commissioners not exceeding 10. So this 10 is the maximum number, and government can appoint any number of Central Information Commissioners less than 10 in number. Then selection committee. Yes friends, the Central Information Commission is selected by the recommendation of a selection committee that consists of the Prime Minister, who shall be the chairperson of the committee, then the leader of opposition in Lok Sabha, and then the Union Cabinet Minister to be nominated by the Prime Minister. So any Union Cabinet Minister who is nominated by the Prime Minister, he will be the part of the committee. Then criteria for appointment, they shall be persons of eminence in public life with wide knowledge and experience in law, science, technology, social service, management, journalism, mass media, or administration and governance. As soon as this Central Information Commission, it provides on almost all the government departments. So a wide range of knowledge and expertise has to be gained by the person if he has to become a member of a Central Information Commission. Then they shall not be a member of a parliament or member of legislature or hold any other office of profit. So this office of profit is a clause which bars the members from taking the Central Information Commission's office. So this criteria, and along with the MP or an MLA clause, because they should work impartially, are imposed on these CIC members. Then come to next one, the term of office and other service conditions of CIC. The Central Information Commissioner shall hold office for a term of 5 years and shall not be eligible for reappointment. Yes friends, this is an old one, and recently the RTI Act has been amended, and the term of office and the salary are being left to the discretion of the government, and these are no more clauses there. Then salaries and allowances and other terms and conditions of service of the Chief Information Commissioner shall be the same as that of the Chief Election Commission. So even this clause is deleted. So now almost all the things regarding the Central Information Commission is left to the whims and fancies of the government, and these two clauses will not hold waters now. Then the powers and functions, the adjudication in second appeal for giving information. Yes friends, the first appeal, it goes to the Public Information Officer of that office, and the second appeal of the government office will come to this Central Information Commission. even in the state, the same rule applies. That is, the first appeal, it goes to the public information officer or the public information authority of that office, and the second appeal goes to the Central Information Commission. Then the direction for record keeping. Yes friends, the data maintenance also comes under RTI. So Central Information Commission can guide the officers in terms of record keeping and data maintenance. Then suo motu disclosures. So what are the informations that has to be put in the websites of the ministries and departments? That is directed by the CIC. Then receiving and inquiring into a complaint on inability to file an RTI. So if I am unable to file an RTI in a government office, that too in a central government office, I can directly complain to the Central Information Commission. Then imposition of penalties and monitoring and reporting, including preparation of annual report. So inspection, then imposing penalties or punishments, then reporting any frauds, and then annual reports. So all these things are other functions of CIC. Then the decisions of the commission are final and binding. Yes friends, these are the binding judgments given by the CIC and they are final. However friends, the appeal can be made to the Supreme Court. But when the appeal is made to the Supreme Court, it is always made in the form of violation of the fundamental rights. Yes friends, even in the case of interstate water dispute tribunals, the judgments are final and binding. But still, some of the cases they reach up to the Supreme Court. Why it is? In that case, once again the cases are taken as the violation of right to live for the people without water. So such things can be attributed to the caliber of the lawyer who takes it up to the Supreme Court, and these are not the loopholes of the law. So whenever the law says binding, so until and unless the lawyer finds any loophole, so it is final and binding, and that judgment shall be implemented at any cost. So this is all about the Central Information Commission. Then come to next one, Election Commission. Friends, why was it in news? Because recently Election Commission of India revised its rules with respect to polling agents. So here we don't discuss the Election Commission, here we discuss the grassroots level officers of the election machinery. Now, the new rules. Now, a political party can nominate a polling agent for any booth within the assembly segment in which the individual is a voter. So, friends, now, if you are appointing a polling agent, that polling agent can be any person within the constituency who votes in that constituency. So, earlier what was the rules? Earlier, the polling agent had to be a voter of that booth or an adjoining booth. So, only those persons who are voting in that booth or any other neighboring booth, only those persons can be made as the polling agents. Now, any persons can be brought in. So, this will help any political party to appoint a polling agent amid the COVID-19 pandemic, since getting one agent at this hour may be difficult. So, friends, during COVID-19 lockdowns, not many people will be coming forward to act as the polling agents. So, in that circumstances, anyone can be brought in from that constituency and he can be made a polling agent. Now, who is a polling agent? Polling agent is a person appointed as a representative of a political party. So, he is an informal person and he is a representative of that political party. And it is not possible for a candidate to be physically present at every polling booth on the day of the elections. So, that is why a polling agent is appointed to monitor the elections. Then, therefore, the Election Commission allows a candidate to appoint a polling agent who keeps an eye on the voting process. So, he will assure that the voting was not fraudulent and it went on a free and fair basis. Then, come to more facts. The role of the polling agent. A polling agent should be familiar with the rules and procedures of conducting elections and using EVMs and VVPATs. So, almost all the rules should be known for this polling agent, else some unnecessary controversies will arise. Then, those holding government positions and those who have been given security cover at the state's expense, including ministers, are not allowed to be polling agents. So, he should be a common man, he should not be a government officer, and he should not be receiving security from the government. Then, polling agent attends the demonstration arranged by the polling officer, where the functioning and operation of these machines are explained. So, he has to attend the demonstrations. That is, in the beginning of the polls, some mock polls are made to demonstrate the voters how the polls has to go. So, in that demonstration, he will attend and he will learn how the process goes on, and then he will monitor from thereafter that the election process is free and fair. Then, the task of presiding officer and polling officers at that polling station will be made easy and smooth if the polling agents discharge their duty sincerely. So, friends, if the polling agents, if they work properly, then there will be least controversies and the work of the polling officer and presiding officer will reduce. Now, we will look into the officials of the election machinery. First one, the Election Commission. He will be the Central Election Commissioner or the Chief Election Commissioner, who will be in the central and then a chief electoral officer. So this chief electoral officer is being appointed by the Central Election Commission, and he will be the state representative of the Central Election Commission. Friends, this post is different from the State Election Commission. So State Election Commission, it only looks after the local body elections, and this State Election Commission has nothing to do with the chief electoral officer. Then the election observers. Friends, one election observer for 2 to 3 constituency will be left for monitoring and overall scrutiny of the polls. So he will be a senior IAS officer or even might be other officer, and he will monitor 2 to 3 constituencies at a time. Then returning officer. Friends, one returning officer will be appointed for every constituency. So he will not only look after the polls, but he will also safeguard all the EVMs that are present in a constituency, and he will also make sure that the nomination will be filed for him, and he will scrutinize the nomination and he will reject those, and he will also give the time for further renomination. So all those things, the nomination filing, last date, rejection, then scrutiny of the nomination and approval will be under his jurisdiction. And returning officer is the officer who is instrumental in counting of the election and declaration of the results. Then presiding officer. Friends, for every single voting center, one presiding officer will be there. So friends, in one single center, there will be 3 to 4 EVMs. So for all the 4 EVMs, this presiding officer, he will be the monitorer. Then coming to the polling officer. So friends, for one EVM, one polling officer will be there, and he will look after that EVM and that VVPAT machine. And it is his duty to take the EVMs safely, then conduct the polls and bring back and submit the EVMs safely to the department. Then come to next one, the Niti Aayog. Friends, Niti Aayog was in news because it recently submitted a detailed report on how India fought the COVID-19 second wave. So in that context, Niti Aayog will become important in the perspective of polity. Now, Niti Aayog consists of Prime Minister of India, who is the chairman. Then the Governing Council, it consists of the Chief Ministers of all the states and Lieutenant Governors of Union Territories in India. So this Governing Council, it is very similar to the National Development Council of Planning Commission. Then the Regional Council, this will be created to address particular issues and possibilities affecting more than one state. So this Regional Council will be temporary, and they will be setting up for a fixed term. This will be formed for a fixed term. Yes, we discussed that. Then it will be summoned by the Prime Minister. Yes, Prime Minister is the sole person who will summon the Regional Council, and it will consist of Chief Ministers of states and Lieutenant Governors of Union Territories who are being harmed by an issue. So all the Chief Ministers and Lieutenant Governors who are stakeholders for an issue will automatically become the members of the Regional Council. Then this will be chaired by the chairperson of Niti Aayog or his nominee. So either Prime Minister or any of his nominee will chair the Regional Council. Then coming to special invitees. Friends, eminent experts, specialists with relevant domain knowledge who are nominated by the Prime Minister, they become the special invitees. So they are appointed informally and they add knowledge and decorum to the Niti Aayog. Then coming to technocratic body. The full-time organizational framework will be the technocratic body, and this will carry out the day-to-day administration in the Niti Aayog. And this will include, in addition to Prime Minister as the chairperson, the vice chairperson who is appointed by the Prime Minister himself. And then the members. The members are full-time members. Friends, currently there are 3 to 4 full-time members. That is Bibek Debroy, then other 2 former defense and home secretaries. They are full-time members currently. So basically the retired bureaucrats and experts, they form the full-time members. Then part-time members. So maximum of 2 members from foremost universities, leading research organizations and other innovative organizations in an ex officio capacity. So these part-time members will be on a rotational basis. So university vice chancellors, directors of organizations, they are appointed on a rotational basis as the part-time members. Then ex officio members, the maximum of 4 members of Council of Ministers, which is to be nominated by the Prime Minister. So along with these experts, even on the rotation basis, 4 members from the Council of Ministers will be appointed. Then Chief Executive Officer, CEO, will be appointed by the Prime Minister for a fixed tenure, and he will be in the rank of Secretary to the Government of India. So CEO of Niti Aayog, he provides the secretarial service to the Niti Aayog. So we have the chairperson, the Governing Council, the Regional Council, then the full-time organizational framework with the vice chairperson, full-time member, part-time member and ex officio members who are assisted by the secretary called CEO. So this is the structure of Niti Aayog. Then come to next one. Public Service Commissions. Friends, first one, the Union Public Service Commission. The appointment of members. The chairman and other members of UPSC are appointed by the President of India. So this President of India is the appointing authority. Then terms of office, 6 years or till the age of 65, whichever is earlier. So either 6 years of term or till the age of 65 is achieved. So if any person, if he is appointed at the age of 62, then he can serve in UPSC only for 3 more years. Then reappointment. Any person who has once held the office as a member of the Public Service Commission is ineligible for reappointment to any other office except to as the chairman of UPSC or SPSC. So if any person who is appointed as the member of UPSC, he can either go on to become a chairperson of the SPSC, that is the State Public Service Commission, or he can become the chairman of UPSC. Else he cannot attain any other office. So friends, if a person is appointed to the UPSC at the age of 58, so until 63 years he can become the member of UPSC, and after that for 2 more years he can become the chairperson of UPSC or any other SPSC. Then resignation. By submitting the written resignation to the President of India, they can resign. So President of India is the person for whom they have to submit the resignation. Then removal or suspension of the members. The chairman or any other member of UPSC shall only be removed from his or her office by order of the President of India, and the President can suspend the chairman or any other member from his or her office in respect of whom a reference has been made to the Supreme Court. So after the reference has been made to the Supreme Court, the suspension can take place. But now the question arises, friends, should the removal require the notice from the Supreme Court? We will see the conditions for removal. The chairman or any other member of UPSC may be removed if he or she is adjudged and insolvent. So if they are going bankrupt, they can be removed. Then engages during the term of office in any paid employment outside the duties of her office. So if they are engaged in any other office of profit outside their office, then also they can be removed. Then is in the opinion of the President unfit to continue in office by reason of infirmity of mind or body. So if they are deceased or if they are mentally ill, even then they can be removed. Yes friends, as the removal is concerned, 3 specific criteria are being provided. So when that is the case, the consent of Supreme Court need not be necessary. But however, for suspension, there are no criteria present. In that case, Supreme Court's reference has to be taken. Then coming to more facts regarding UPSC, the regulating the conditions of services. Yes friends, in the case of UPSC, the President of India shall determine the number of members of the commission and their conditions of service. So the number is not fixed, they can vary, and even the conditions of service can vary. Then make provisions with respect to the number of members of the staff of the commission and their conditions of service. So even the staff of UPSC, that is the assistants, under secretaries and others of UPSC, are decided by the President. Then restriction of power. The condition of service of a member of UPSC shall not be amended after his or her appointment that may lead to his or her disadvantage. So if any disadvantageous amendment has to be made, that has to be made before the appointment, and once the appointment is made, only the amendments to the terms and conditions of service which are advantageous to the officer can be made, and those which are disadvantageous, such cannot be made. Then expenses of UPSC. The expenses of UPSC including the salaries, allowances and pensions of the members or staff of the commission are charged on the Consolidated Fund of India. So this charged because it has to work impartially. Then submission of the report. UPSC shall present an annual report to the President of India containing the work done by the commission, and President shall provide a memorandum explaining the cases where the advice of commission was not accepted. So if UPSC sends a selection list of the civil service candidates, and if they are not accepted by President, then President shall place a memorandum of reason regarding the same. Then the reasons for such non-acceptance are presented before each house of the Parliament. So whenever a President rejects the candidates selected lists, so that reason has to be placed before the houses of the Parliament. So this is all about the Union Public Service Commission. Friends, the State Public Service Commission will almost be similar to UPSC, but there are some changes. Now, appointment of the members. The chairman and other members of the State Public Service Commission are appointed by the governor of the state, not by the President. But obvious. Then the term of office. A member of SPSC shall hold office for a term of 6 years or till the age of 62 years, whichever is earlier. So this 62 has to be remembered. For UPSC it was 65. Then reappointment. any person who has once held office as a member of Public Service Commission is ineligible for reappointment to that office except as chairperson of the SPSC and member or chairperson of UPSC. So, if any person, if he becomes the member of the State Public Service Commission, after that he can either become the chairman of the State Public Service Commission or the member of Union Public Service Commission or the chairperson of Union Public Service Commission. Only these three officers are allowed, others are banned. Then, removal or suspension of the members. The chairman or any other members of SPSC shall only be removed by the order of the president. So, this removal is same as UPSC and that is also by president as well. This is not by governor. So, this is the point to be noted here. Then, governor of the state shall suspend the chairman or any other member from his or her office in respect of whom a reference has been made to the Supreme Court. So, here in case of suspension, governor can do it, but even he has to do it from the reference made by the Supreme Court, not the High Court. So, these are confusing here. So, you will remember. So, these are some of the facts regarding UPSC and SPSC. Then come to next one, the FSI, that is the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. Friends, before the establishment of this FSI, the Vegetable Oil Products Control Order 1947, then Prevention of Food Adulteration Act 1954 and Food Products Order 1955 and Meat Food Products Order 1973. So, these clauses and rules and regulations, they looked into the food safety and hygiene in India. But after the FSI Act 2006 was established, from then on FSI is looking into the food safety and hygiene within the country. And this FSI, it is established under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So, it is not under Ministry of Food and Civil Supplies, it is not under any other ministry, it is under Ministry of Health. So, this point has to be remembered. Then, composition of FSI, it consists of chairman appointed by the central government, then 22 other members, of which 1/3 must be women. So, this 1/3 of women membership has to be remembered. Then, a strong team of scientists and researchers for testing of food quality, but obvious there has to be experts and scientists, and separate committees for experts with a scientific background. So, a separate committee which looks into technical matters has to be separately appointed. So, this separate committee has to be remembered once again. Then, coming to more facts, the functions of FSI. Friends, the functions of FSI are related to setting of rules and guidelines for all food manufacturing companies, keeping into consideration the hygiene and food safety. So, the rules and guidelines are set by the FSI itself. Then, granting licenses to pursue any food related business. So, any food business, they have to take license from the FSI. Then, test the standard of food. Friends, FSI itself, with the help of its officials, it will test the samples of food and it will certify it. Then, proper inspection is done for food producing and manufacturing companies to ensure that standards are at par with the guidelines. So, inspection is also being done by the officials of FSI. Then, spreading of food safety awareness. So, even awareness creation programs, then circulation of papers, then Nukkad Nataks, all these are being funded and carried out by the FSI. Then, maintaining records and data of all registered organizations. So, all the organizations and the food manufacturers, they will have to be registered under FSI, and the data of all those registered companies will be monitored and maintained by the FSI. Then, keeping the government updated, and any food safety related threat must be informed to the government for further action. So, informing the government regarding any food safety issue and other things is also the duty of FSI. Then, assist the government in framing food standard policies. So, the overall rules and the laws which are enacted by the government will be enacted by the suggestion and recommendation of the FSI. So, this is all about the FSI, that is the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. Then, come to next one, the National Consumer Disputes Redressal Commission. Friends, the National Consumer Disputes Redressal Commission, the NCDRC, is a quasi-judicial commission established as per the provisions of Consumer Protection Act 1986, and it was established in the year 1988. Then, the NCDRC is headed by a retired or a sitting judge of the Supreme Court. So, here retired or sitting has to be noted down, and the judge of the Supreme Court has to be noted. So, here the adjudicating authority is a judicial officer because it is a quasi-judicial body. Then, currently the NCDRC is headed by a former Supreme Court judge and comprises 7 other members. So, currently the strength of this NCDRC is 8. Then, the NCDRC is at the apex, while it has 35 state commissions and 629 district fora. So, the National Consumer Dispute Redressal Commission, it has branches in 35 states and union territories, and there are also district branches in 629 districts. Then the jurisdiction of NCDRC. As per the 2019 Amendment Act, the NCDRC will entertain complaints valued above rupees 10 crore. Friends, earlier it was 1 crore. Now it has been increased to 10 crores via this 2019 Amendment Act. Then also the Commission has appellate as well as revisional jurisdiction from the orders of State Consumer Disputes Redressal Commissions and the District Fora. So friends, any judgments of the State and District Consumer Forums, they can be appealed to this NCDRC. Then the judgment of the NCDRC alone can be revised because it is also having revisional jurisdiction. Then any person who is aggrieved by an order of the NCDRC may appeal against the order in the Supreme Court within a period of 30 days. So even appeal to the Supreme Court is possible if it is done within 30 days. Then the state commissions will entertain the cases between 1 crore and 10 crore. So as the NCDRC's jurisdiction is above 10 crores, the state's jurisdiction is 1 crore to 10 crore. Then the District Fora for Consumer Redressal will look into cases up to 1 crore. So the district forums, they will look into cases which are less than 1 crore. Then the complainant can make the complaint in the place where he or she works or resides rather than where the opposite party resides. So if any consumer is being deceived, then he can file the case from the place of his residence, not the company's residence. Yes friends, this will be advantageous for the consumer because he need not come to the place where the company is doing business to file the case. He can file it from his own home place. So these are some of the clauses of National Consumer Disputes Redressal Commission. Then come to next one, the Bharatiya Shiksha Board. Friends, why was it in news? Because recently the union government gave its approval to the Baba Ramdev's Patanjali Yogipith Trust to set up Bharatiya Shiksha Board. So this Bharatiya Shiksha Board is a governmental organization, but that is sponsored and motivated by Baba Ramdev's Patanjali Yogapita Trust. Then about the Bharatiya Shiksha Board, the idea to establish a new national school board for Swadeshikaran of education was first mooted by Ramdev. So this Swadeshikaran is the motto behind this Bharatiya Shiksha Board. Then the BSB has been registered as a society and set up an office in Haridwar. So this is a society now under the Societies Registration Act. It has been registered. Then a sum of rupees 71 crore as Corpus Fund and Development Fund has been deposited in its bank account, and the executive board of BSP has also been constituted. So this funds has been provided by the government and it has been constituted as well. Then BSB, a national school board on Vedic education, will be set up on the lines of CBSE. So this will be setting up on the lines of CBSE. So that is going to become a formal institution, though it is motivated by a private organization. Then functions. BSB was conceived to standardize the Indian traditional knowledge and blend it with a modern education by way of drafting curriculum, then affiliating the schools, then conducting examinations and issuing certificates. So drafting of curriculum, then affiliating various schools within it, then conducting examinations and then issuing certificates. These are some of the functions of Bharatiya Shiksha Board. Then the BSB is likely to affiliate Baba Ramdev's Acharya Kulam and then Vidya Bharati schools run by RSS and Gurukuls run by Arya Samaj. So Ramdev's Acharya Kulam, then RSS Vidya Bharati schools and then Arya Samaj Gurukuls. So all these are being blended into Bharatiya Shiksha Board. So this is all about Bharatiya Shiksha Board. The selection committees. Yes friends, we know that various constitutional and statutory bodies, they are being selected by the recommendation of various selection committees, and these are bit confusing. So that is why I have brought some of the committees. First one, Lokpal. Friends, Lokpal is selected by a selection committee that is comprising of the Prime Minister of India, then Speaker of the Lower House or the Lok Sabha, and Leader of Opposition of the Lower House, and then Chief Justice of India or the Judge of the Supreme Court nominated by him, and then eminent jurist nominated by the President. So here there are basically 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 members. So this is a 5-member committee which nominates or appoints the Lokpal. Then coming to CIC, that is the Central Information Commission, the Prime Minister who shall be the chairperson of the committee, then Leader of Opposition in Lok Sabha and a Union Cabinet Minister to be nominated by the Prime Minister. So we have discussed while discussing CIC. So these are the 3 members who select the CIC. Then coming to NHRC, friends, again Prime Minister who is the chairman, then Speaker of Lok Sabha, then the Union Home Minister, then Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha, and the leaders of opposition in both the houses of the parliament. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6-member committee, this will elect NHRC. So now a comparison, Prime Minister in all of them. Then when coming to Union Cabinet Minister to be appointed, it is only in the CIC. Then leader of opposition in Lok Sabha is present in all the three, but the leader of opposition in Rajya Sabha is present only in the NHRC. Then the deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha is present only for the NHRC. Then Union Home Minister is present only for the NHRC, because human rights and law and order, they always come under the Home Ministry. Then here, as the Lokpal is also a judicial authority, some judicial officers, they form the members. So on the basis of requirement and the jurisdiction, various members, they come into the selection committee. Then come to next one, the CVC, that is the Central Vigilance Commission. So here also the Prime Minister as the chairperson, then Minister of Home Affairs. Friends, the vigilance, it comes under Home Ministry because it is a law and order subject. That is why Home Minister becomes the part and parcel. Then leader of opposition in the House of the People, that is leader of opposition in Lok Sabha, he will become the part of the committee. So here three members, that is the Prime Minister, Home Minister and leader of opposition in Lok Sabha. Then coming to CBI, again the Prime Minister as the chairperson, then leader of opposition of Lok Sabha or the leader of single largest opposition party in Lok Sabha, if the former is not present due to lack of the mandated strength in the Lok Sabha, a member. So friends, if there is a leader of opposition as designated by Lok Sabha, then leader of opposition will become the member. So if there is no opposition at all, that is based on the 10% law, currently there is no leader of opposition who is being granted because Congress hasn't got the 10% of seats. In that case, the leader of the largest party, he will become the member, so that the appointment of CBI will not be stalled due to lack of an leader of opposition. And then the Chief Justice of India or a Supreme Court judge recommended by the Chief Justice. So if Chief Justice of India is there, he will become the member. If he is not there, any other judges who are recommended by him will become the members. So this is all about the comparison between the selection committees for various constitutional and statutory bodies. And then coming to the last part, friends, there goes a saying that succeeding without any fall is great, but succeeding after every fall, that is getting up after every fall, is the greatest. So your ability to fight back matters a lot rather than you succeeding again and again. So never worry for the failures and make sure that those failures will turn to the stepping stones for success. So do it. All the very best. Good luck, friends.